Good afternoon from wherever you are. This is Andy Blocker with Invesco. Great to be with you. I'm here to give you an update here on what's going on in Washington in the election. So I've got a lot to cover, so I want to jump right to it. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if I can actually do that. Stand by. All right, I think I might have successfully done that. That's what it's telling me. Okay, all right, let's go. All right, so there's a lot going on, but there's been a lot going on the last few days with the election. So with that, I'm just going to give you my quick overview here. All right, first I'll start with the main issues that we think determine the outcome of this election. We'll have more data on the outset, but we think that this is where it is. So what we've been talking about for the last few months as we get in presentations is that one of the areas that is important is what issues are the candidates focusing on, and they better be the issues that the American people are focusing on. And there's a great poll every year by Pew Research Center called America's Top Priorities. And if we look here, we've got from January 2020, the top priorities are terrorism, economy, healthcare costs, and education. And the way we like to look at this, we like to look at it as Maslow's hierarchy of needs from your college psychology course. So when you look at terrorism, we think that's a proxy for physical security. Are you safe? Along with fighting crime in your neighborhood or fighting the Cold War. Those are all very important. You need to make sure you're safe, usually the top priority. Then we look at the economy, that's a proxy for financial security. Can you provide for yourself? Can you eat? That is always at the top, those two. For this election, we have a clear, stark choice. The American people believe that Biden is most equipped to handle COVID-19, which for many, not all, but for many, is considered a physical security issue, a life and death issue. And we'll talk about that more later. And then also on financial security, the economy, people trust Donald Trump to bring the economy back. So that's your financial security. So it's a clear choice, which is more important. Biden's argument is that COVID-19, if you don't deal with the virus, you don't get the economy back. Donald Trump's message was, let's push through the economy. We can't let the virus, control us and create all these other problems. You can't let the cure be worse than the disease. So that was lined up, the issue, and the data is still coming in, but it was really actually split. But for some key segments, and we'll get to that in a second, COVID-19 trumped the economy as the top issue for some key voting segments. And the number one key voting segment was the senior vote. 6-1 margin, people 65 or over said it was more important to deal with the virus than the economy. And for those voters, that was determinative. So now let's get to the election. What happened? Okay, so this is the map that we had before the election that we were talking from. We can talk all day we want about, national polls, all that. Doesn't matter. State by state, electoral college, you got to win enough electoral votes from the different states to become president of the United States. And in 2016, Donald Trump won by less than 100,000 votes. He won those key Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And in doing so, he was on his way to the presidency. The key thing that I've been saying from the start is forget about what everyone else says. They're going to talk about Texas and Florida and all these great states and Georgia and all that. But all that matters is the Rust Belt. If Donald Trump holds all the states he got in 2016 and he adds with one of the three, Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania, he's reelected as president. If he loses one of his states, he may have to pick up another one in addition to it. But all he had to do is pick up one, hold court on the home team front, and then keep one of these ones in enemy territory that he kind of squeaked through last time. The other thing we said was that Biden would have to win all three, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, if he got the same states that he had last time. If he were able to pick off another state, he'd have less to do. And that's where we are today. So let's look at where we are today. Okay, this is the map as it looks right now, and I'll go through this real quickly. Essentially, as we went through the night, okay, Democrats wanted to get Florida. They're hopeful. They're in the lead. Oh, they didn't win. Then they want to get Georgia. They're in the lead. Oh, they're not in the lead. Then they want to win North Carolina. They're in the lead. Oh, they're not in the lead. Then Ohio. They're in the lead. Oh, they don't win. Okay, so especially with Florida and Ohio, I've always said to anyone who's listened, It's like you're not going to replace a Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania with an Ohio, Florida. They look good, they look pretty at the start, but they're always going to be disappointing. It's like Lucy with the football, okay? And that's exactly what happened on election night. They started off to a big lead because in those states, they count mail-in ballots first, which favored mail-out and early votes first because that favored Democrats. Democrats were able to get up to a big lead, but then when the same day vote, which is what Trump encouraged, they overtook them big time. Same thing happened in Georgia and North Carolina, but those are still too close to call right now, and we'll probably know Georgia later today. So anyway, so basically, beginning of the night, Trump held serve. So then you're moving to Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and early in the night, it's the opposite in the Midwest states. In the Midwest states, they don't announce the mail-in ballots first. They announce the same day votes first, which favors Trump. So unlike in the South, where Biden went out to a big lead and then Trump caught him, the reverse is happening in the Rust Belt. So starting with Wisconsin, Trump was up 100,000 votes, but then early yesterday, around 4:45 in the morning, they released their mail-in votes for Milwaukee and Kenosha County. And at that point, Biden had overtaken him by 20,000 votes, right around the same amount that Trump won in 2016. Biden's winning that state right now, which most networks have declared for Biden. Same thing in Michigan. Started off, Trump came out to an early lead as they are doing the same day vote count. He was up by over 200,000, 225, 250,000. No matter. Detroit, Wayne County comes in, Lansing. He gets it and gets all the mail-in votes coming in, takes over. And now he's been declared the winner of Michigan. So you had Wisconsin 100,000 deficit, Michigan 200,000+ deficit, but Pennsylvania was at a 600,000 vote deficit. You're like, that can't be overtaken. Well, it's going to be overtaken today. So I think right around now, it's very small margin, but there's tons of votes left out of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. At the end of the day, Biden is going to win Pennsylvania by 100 to 200,000 votes. And why is that important? It's important because on the map here, you've got on the West Coast, you've got Nevada still not called. They'll have the votes later today, and you've got Arizona. See, with Arizona, AP, Fox News called it very early for Biden, but the other networks were not calling it. And the Trump people were like, wait, you're getting this wrong. There's a lot of votes coming. We think there are votes. They don't think they're Biden's votes. And so the key to Arizona is if he won Arizona, if Biden won Arizona, he would only have to win 2 of the 3, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania doesn't matter. But if Arizona flips back to Trump, which it could, what you're going to have a situation is that then Biden will need either Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Of those, his most likely is Pennsylvania. And if Trump holds Georgia, holds North Carolina, and wins Arizona, then it's all about Pennsylvania. And if it's all about Pennsylvania, then you're going to be in a serious situation. Okay, what is that margin of victory that Biden's ahead? Does that margin include votes that arrive after 8 o'clock on Tuesday night? Because their law there says that it has to be postmarked by election day, and they can accept them all the way up until Friday at 5 p.m. So there's a case before the Supreme Court right now, which they didn't take before the election, but they may take after the election. And the key here is that they're going to judge whether or not that's a violation of state law and or the Constitution of the United States. And so what the state secretary of Pennsylvania has been doing, he's been segregating the votes between those that arrived by 8 p.m. on Tuesday and those that arrived after. And so he's going to count them all, but he's got them segregated so that if the Supreme Court comes down and says, hey, those votes that came after Tuesday at 8 p.m., they're not counted, they're unconstitutional, whatever they say, then they can just take those votes out of the tally, and then you'll know who the winner is based on what happened by 8 o'clock that night. And that's really going to depend on, what the vote margin is. I have no knowledge of which votes came after 8 o'clock on Tuesday. people say that it's going to be a big enough victory by Biden is not going to make a difference. But here's the situation. As far as all the court challenges you're seeing, the only court challenges that will matter and that may go to the Supreme Court, there's a few hurdles. One, there needs to be shown some harm. Like if we were to go your direction, it would actually make a difference in whether you win that state or not. So in Pennsylvania, if Biden were already going to win with everything that arrived by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, they're not going to take up the case, because even if they go in favor of Trump's campaign, it's not going to change the outcome in Pennsylvania. The other thing is that they might not even take it up if Pennsylvania is not determinative. If say Trump makes his case and he wins the case and it results in him winning, but it doesn't help him win get to 270, they're not going to take case either. So that's why Arizona is so important, because if Arizona stays with Biden, he doesn't need Pennsylvania. And this is not going to be, the courts aren't going to be bothered with this. But if Trump wins Arizona, wins Georgia, wins North Carolina, then Pennsylvania and any court case is going to be in place. So that's the thing we're focused on right now. I hope that made sense. All right, so then let's look at what happened here. So Trump, some of his key demographical advantages, you've probably seen this before. Evangelical Christians, white, non-college educated voters, rural, and then just plain white. But the key is the non-college educated white voter, 24-point margin for Trump, a big stronghold. Why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because you're like, well, what happened to the polls? Why is it that the polls once again didn't get it right? They said that they had accommodated for white non-college educated voters, made them more prominent in their polling, made sure that they reached out to them. They also were gonna, they had a few other things, like some national polling outfits started doing state pollings, because state pollings was where the problem was, not national polls. And that they were going to use their national expertise in the states. Okay, great. Well, it didn't work. But here's part of the reason I think. What we've been talking about for some time is voter registration and turnout. First, typically Democrats register new voters at a greater pace than Republicans. That is normally all that happens ever until this year. Trump campaign did an incredible job of making sure they registered voters in key states in Florida, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, doubling what the Democrats were doing in those states. So you can see that. That's one thing that I don't think that the pollsters put into their calculation, for the fact that there's these new Republican voters at that level. And the other thing is that in the Rust Belt in particular, and elsewhere, but particularly in the Rust Belt, the Trump campaign focused extremely on non-college educated white voters. Remember, that's why I showed you that other slide about that being a stronghold for Trump, and basically said, okay, there's this group of people in that demographic who were registered to vote, but didn't even vote in 2016 when I won. So if I can go out and get those guys who are already registered to get engaged, I'm going to bank some votes that no one can see. So in Pennsylvania, if you see this chart, almost double the number of people. There's almost twice as many non-college educated white voters as there are all other voters. And those all other voters are typically Biden voters versus the non-college educated white voters, which are typically Trump voters, 2.3 million to 1.3 million. So if you just get like 50% of that, and say even 50% of them turn out, and even if the Democrats do a job, you get 50% of theirs, that's 500,000 votes. That's a big difference in a state like Pittsburgh or any state. So I think he did get a bump from focusing on these voters and getting them motivated to come out, which was what made made it so much closer in the Rust Belt than otherwise it would have been. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is the enthusiasm gap. I mean, people really weren't voting for Biden. They were voting, if they're voting for Biden, they're mostly voting because they didn't like Trump. So Trump was the motivation on both sides. And so you can see here, so that motivation, that if you're enthusiastic, you're actually going to go and vote. If you're not enthusiastic, you're like, yeah, I don't like him, but whatever, I have something else to do. So I think the thing that saved Biden on the turnout is that we're in a pandemic and people didn't have anything else to do. And so people were more focused on the campaign. So he got probably more of a turnout because of that. Then if we look here, I'm going to start looking at early voters. And when you look at early voters, starting in Florida, normally Democrats outpace early outpaced Republicans in early vote. But in Florida, and this is a big reason that Trump was able to win Florida, they kept right even. If you look on the upper right side, 2020 early voters, dead even. So he's dead even there, then they're not going to pull out with the same day vote. Okay, then you look at Wisconsin, a little bit of an advantage for Democrats, but if you look at the gray bar, 336,000 unaffiliated, they were disproportionately for Biden. And so that helped him there in the early vote count. And then as you look at Michigan, same thing. They're pretty close on the early vote, but they but the unaffiliated probably took them over the top. And then in Pennsylvania, didn't even really need the unaffiliated. Look, 2-to-1, 1.3 million is 616,000. That's a huge difference. And that's why, even though the deficit was so large at 600,000, that early vote was 700,000 difference. And that was really trending towards the Democrats. So that's why we're really confident that by today or tomorrow, Pennsylvania will be declared for Biden. Okay, we look at mail-in voting just in general. I talked a little bit about it, but anyway, you know they have all different rules, and that's why basically in the Sun Belt, they count the early vote. They count they announce the early vote and the mail-in vote first, and then the same day vote after. Whereas in the Rust Belt, they do the opposite. Then the Senate. This is really important because it kind of determines what's going to happen legislatively. So coming into the night, there was a thought there was going to be some blue wave where Biden was going to win overwhelmingly, and the Senate was going to turn Democratic. They were going to gain, 3 to 4 seats. Well, that's not in the play right now. So you had a lot of playing field. You had Colorado, Arizona, Maine, Montana, North Carolina, etc. Well, they got Colorado and Arizona for the Democratic side. Not going to get Maine, not going to get Montana. North Carolina is still in play, but Cunningham is a little bit behind where Biden is. So even if Biden takes North Carolina, it's not sure that Cunningham will get with him. Or Iowa, Republicans maintain that. And then the Georgia races, we're probably going to have a couple runoffs on that. So they have to wait for that. And then and the pickups for the Republicans, they picked up Alabama, which was expected. They did not pick up Michigan. So the summary of that is right here. So instead of, they needed 3 net seats, and they're right now net 1. So they'd have to pick up 2 new seats. I think their best chance of picking up those 2 new seats are in Georgia runoffs. If they get 2 Georgia runoffs, that's their best chance, because I'm not sure about North Carolina at all at this point. But if they do get North Carolina, they'll be 1 seat away, and I have to pick out for one of the 2 Georgia seats if both of them go to a runoff. One of them is right now hovering around 50% for the Republican candidate. So we'll see on that. The big deal on that is that we have divided government right now if the Republicans maintain the Senate. And so a lot of the things we talked about, these are the scenarios. Scenario 2, Republicans hold the Senate, Biden wins, but that's where, the Democratic agenda goes to die. I mean, McConnell's not going to let through a Green New Deal. He's not going to let through Obamacare expansion. He's not going to have a bunch of raising of taxes on individuals or corporations. So that's gone. And then they're going to have to focus on things like infrastructure and things they can agree on, pharmaceutical pricing, things like that. So you're going to have very targeted things that they're going to work through. We're going to have to work together, but the bid-ask spread on what can be done is tightened pretty significantly. Beyond 2020, we're still looking at the same industries: fossil fuel, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, building and trades, technology, as being affected by this election. I think the prevailing wisdom is that while fossil fuels may have dodged a bullet for any sort of environmental legislation, they still haven't dodged a bullet on environmental regulation out of potential Biden administration. Healthcare, pharmaceuticals, I think all the things that aren't in the paper, but the Trump administration was doing to undercut the effectiveness of Obamacare will be reversed. They'll do ads more. They'll change parts of the program, make sure people are aware of them and that they're trying to help people, not kick people off. So that's one thing. And then pharmaceutical pricing, I think they'll be a little more aggressive on that. Even though Trump did talk about international pricing, but Republicans in the Senate were extremely upset with him even proposing that. So that's in play. Then building and trades, construction. we thought that if there were a blue wave, you'd have a huge COVID-19 and infrastructure bill, which would be pretty sizable. So building and trades would benefit. We still think there'll be some kind of bill, but it'll be much more measured than it would otherwise be. And then technology, they were under the gun regardless of who won the election. I do think the fact of split government, it's unlikely that there'll be any legislation going after them, but there will be regulatory oversight to the extent that they can, or at least scrutiny. Let's put it that way. But they're not going to have Section 230 apply to them as a publisher, where they're potentially liable for they're potentially subject to libel suits. So anyway, let's go. Keep on going. Okay, trade and sanctions. Same. Okay, the difference is that we know Trump is volatile. He can change the policy with a tweet. He can do different things. Biden would not be as volatile, be more measured, more deliberate. The other thing is Donald Trump is mano a mano, bilateral, one-on-one negotiations, whereas I think Biden would go more multilateral. He'd more, especially with respect to China, probably want to surround them by getting with our neighbors in that region as opposed to confronting them directly. But the thing that Trump did do that every politician for the last 30, 40 years has been saying they do, but did not do, is really take the fight to China over their intellectual property and their trade practices, et cetera. So I think he crossed the Rubicon there with his tariffs, and I don't think they're going to be rolled back right away. I think that Biden will have to maintain those until when and if he's able to get some concessions back for the Chinese to sell the American people, because right now 73% of the American people have a negative view of China. So doesn't matter who's president, I think that's going to be reflected in their policies. And lastly, we've got the tax scenarios. Those are out the window. I mean, Trump was going to lower taxes, split Congress. He's not going to be able to do that. And Biden's going to try to increase taxes, split Congress. I think that goes out the window. And then the only thing is the lame duck. What are we going to do? I think the big thing on the lame duck, and I'll close here, is that if Trump wins, I think you'll get a pretty quick COVID-19 relief package. If Biden wins, not so sure, because you're still with a lame duck. I'm not sure how much Trump's going to want to play ball before he would leave. So that's up in the air. But at some point, you are going to have a stimulus, a COVID-19 relief. It's not going to be as big as it would be with a blue wave. It would have been north of almost a $3 trillion plus under Democratic control of all chambers. But with split government, you're looking at less than $2 trillion. So that's all I have for you today. It's been great talking to you, and feel free to contact anyone to get me if you need me, and I hope you have a great day.